I've got a confession to make to you tonight. I think I'm turning into Victor Meldrew. When I see the amount of Americanization and commercialization of Halloween that seems to be happening these days, I just want to scratch my head and yell out, I don't believe it! My local shops seem to be full for the last few weeks of witches' hats, funny plastic noses, glow-in-the-dark fangs, devil forks, and all the other apparently essential paraphernalia of Halloween. But is that the real Halloween? Certainly not for me. I come from a small seaside town in Scotland called Arbroath, famous for its ancient abbey and a fishy delicacy called the Arbroath Smoky. And growing up in that small, quiet country town where it was very safe, there were a huge amount of different things to entertain young children. But there were a few things that particularly stick in my mind, and one of them is the period at the end of October and the beginning of November, Halloween and bonfire night, because for me the two are inextricably linked, because one was a means to the other. For me, Halloween, it sticks in my memory, was a means to an end in that it was a way to raise money to buy fireworks. And I used to love fireworks. In those cold, dusky winter evenings when it was dark before you got home from school, the summer holidays were long gone, and Christmas still seemed like an eternity away. Halloween and bonfire night in particular was the one thing you looked forward to. And the icing on the cake were the fireworks. I loved fireworks. The colours, all those amazing bright sparkles and shimmers and screams, the sounds, the whizzes and the bangs, and the smells, that sulphurous smell in the air that really aroused my young senses. And so I would do anything to get fireworks. And remember, I'm talking about a time way back in the late 1960s, when the only time you ever saw fireworks were in that very narrow period around the 5th of November. And the other thing about fireworks that I loved were the names. Roman candles, traffic lights, bangers. My favourite, I think you down here call them jumping jacks, but we called them barking doggies, that you'd light and throw among your friends' feet to scare them. The other attractive thing I liked about fireworks were the fact that they were dangerous. And danger is always attractive to young boys. But the challenge was they were quite expensive, and my 2 and 6 a week pocket money didn't go very far when it came to buying these rare treats. But thankfully our culture provided a ready solution, and that was called guising. And there were 3 parts to guising, 3 essential parts to this process of guising. One was a neat lantern, second was a guy, and third was a bit of a brass neck. And I'll tell you a little bit about each of those. The neat lantern, or the neep, or turnip, or perhaps swede, you might know it, took on a very different role in October. We boys would search the greengrocers for the biggest, ugliest, knobbliest turnip we could find. Now, I'm not talking about the little turnips you see in the shops down here. These were great big turnips. And you would take them home to begin the transformation process. And we would start, a bit like Frankenstein, by cutting off the top of the head and scooping out the insides to create a hollow chamber. And now, that's similar to what is done now with pumpkin lanterns. But in my boyhood, we didn't see pumpkins in this country. You only saw them on American TV programs. We used real turnips. And I can tell you it's an awful lot harder to scoop out the insides of a turnip than it is a pumpkin. The children of today, they've got it easy, make no mistake. So once we'd scooped out the insides, we'd then start to work to carve a face on the outside. Some big eyes, a triangular nose, and a big ghoulish, grimacing mouth. The scarier, the better. And then finally we put a little candle inside, put the lid back on the top, and bring the whole creation to life. You top that off with a sisal string handle, and you carry this lighted lantern round the streets and display it in houses. And there was real competition between me and my friends to create the biggest and the most evil-looking neat lantern you could. So that was part one, the neat lantern. Part two was the guy. Now, about this time, my friends and I would gather all the raw materials you needed to make a guy. And that would be, we'd beg, borrow and steal anything. Old clothes, shirts, your mother's tights, pillowcases, newspaper, straw, everything. And we'd cram all these things together to create a life-sized and highly flammable effigy, complete with a grimacing face, which would end up on the top of a bonfire in memory of Guy Fawkes. But before the guy met his incendiary fate, he had a very important role to play, because he helped us fulfill the last part of the story, which was to raise the money for the fireworks. So on the 31st of October, or thereabouts, in the evening, we'd light our turnip lanterns, we'd put the guy in a wheelbarrow, and we'd wheel them round the streets, around our neighbours. And we'd knock on the doors, and with a very practised and appealing look in our eyes, when the door was open, we'd say, "Penny for the guy, mister!" or "Mrs." But now, it's not as easy as that. It took more from my neighbours than a well-dressed guy, to actually get the money. You had to have a joke or story or a party piece to win the person over. And you'd be glad to know that the jokes I told back then are lost in the mists of time. So I won't be inflicting them on you tonight. But as for my party piece, no, you're safe. I've forgotten that too. But I'm quite convinced to this day I got paid more to stop singing than I ever did to sing. So those little party pieces would end us up getting a penny for the guy. And when it was a penny, it was a real old penny. And we gather those together over the few days around Halloween, end up with a big pile of coins. There was only one thing left to do. Take it down to the shops on a Saturday morning to buy the fireworks. And to argue with your friends about which ones to buy. So that was a little bit of my childhood and my memories of Halloween. And I only hope that the children of today have as much fun with their Halloween coming up as I did with mine. Thank you very much.